one of our favorite people to be here, Reverend Barbara Schreiner Trudel. Thank you for being here, Reverend Barbara. We're excited to hear your talk on forgiveness and the forgiveness scale. Just a quick little bit about Barbara if you have not met her before. She's known by Rev B by many. She's an ordained minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity Worldwide Ministries. And she's the minister of record for Unity Kitchener. Since 1996, she has been speaking and coaching to thousands of people to live in joy. She believes that love is the answer, regardless of the question or the situation. She's inspired people to create new careers, fulfilling relationships, experience greater fulfillment, freedom, and peace of mind. She is the founder and spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake. She has written 5 books and is preparing to publish her first children's book. Reverend Barbara, I will turn the slides over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's great to be here as always. It's such a joy. And this weekend, of course, is extra special with the Truth and Reconciliation, when we put that front and center as we acknowledge what has occurred within our Indigenous family life and how we've changed things. It's interesting. I was at an event where, Indigenous and other people had been calling in the ancestors, and I couldn't call in my ancestors. I kept thinking about the residential schools and what happened, the harm that was done as we came here and decided to disrupt the way of life of an entire group of people to be our way, because our way was the right way. So for me, that took a minute. And that's where forgiveness comes in, doesn't it? It's like we have to acknowledge who I am, where I am, as I am, and to acknowledge that I've made a mistake at some point in time in my life that has caused somebody harm. And I might experience harm myself because of the way I treat me, or I might feel a bit of resentment because of the way I assume somebody else has treated me. Anybody ever have a thing happen that you need to forgive? Well, forgiveness it's necessary for our spiritual evolution, and it's probably the toughest thing to do because they did it and they should be the one asking for forgiveness. Am I right? Anybody ever thought that? Whether it was a spouse or a parent or a sibling or our bosses or whoever, somebody done something to us that needs forgiveness. So when we think about it, it's really important to kind of put it in perspective. And I wanted to share something written by Meredith L. Young Sowers, and it's A Mystic Speaks on Forgiveness of Others. And she wrote, "Love is the emotional and spiritual energy that ties you to those who have hurt you. The issues that seem to defy forgiveness are always aligned in some way with love. The love you never received, the love that you offered and others rejected or betrayed, the love that was used to manipulate or control you. Love is the basis of your life's well-being, but is tying your spiritual energy reserves to old hurts. You are, of course, when we do that, we're severely limiting the energy of love available to us in the present moment." So the idea of forgiveness is, I think, misunderstood by many, because we think that, if I forgive somebody, then I've, basically said what they did was okay. And that's not forgiveness at all. So Colin Tipping, in his book, Radical Forgiveness, gives us 5 stages. And he says the important thing is to just go through these stages in whatever order that you do. But the first is to tell the story, the feelings, everything you experience, what they did, how they did it, how justified you feel in all of that, and really tell the story in a big way, whether to somebody who's willing to listen without commentary, or to do it actually as a writing exercise. And there you're speaking to yourself. And the second one is to feel the feelings, right? Whatever feelings come up, the anger, the resentment, the frustration, allow those feelings. Allow yourself to feel them and be with them, because we cannot move anything that we resist. right? And non-forgiveness is really an exercise in resistance to what is, and trying to justify things. The third step, he says, is collapsing the story. So this is to look at our interpretation and to change the way we look at it. You know, how did I interpret this and that have led me to believe what I believe now? Okay, so we just take a look at it a little closer. And then he says reframing the story. So this allows us to shift our perception. And I know that we might do this with a family member where we go, oh, wait a minute, I can forgive my mom for saying whatever when I was 3 years old because she was doing the best she could with what she knew. So we begin to reframe the story, considering there might be something else going on that we don't know about. And then, of course, the last thing is integration, where we've allowed ourselves to be willing to see the perfection and how whatever happened has brought us to where we are now. So I would like to add a sixth, and I think it should be the very first one, and that's being willing to even consider forgiveness. Willing to forgive. Yes, that's the tough one. For non-forgiveness, of course, is a little bit like drinking poison, expecting someone else to die. And the only person we harm by holding resentment, judgment, anger, frustration, annoyance, impatience, the only person we're ever harming is us. So we want to begin to take a look at how we're viewing life. Now, when I think about all that has happened to the Indigenous people of Canada and North America and around the world, for that matter, what I see is this idea of exerting power over and the damage that that has done. Now there's, how do we reconcile? How do we shift? And it has to start with our own personal responsibility of how am I today? How do I respond to the things I'm seeing today, hearing today? How do I respond to that? And noticing what I feel and allowing those feelings to be present, and then choosing, wait a minute, let me take a look at where this all came from and how I can shift it. So for me, when it comes to the Indigenous people, I was taught by my father, who was very racist against First Nations. And so I didn't even know it, but I had a belief that if a person was an Indigenous person to Canada, then they were probably a drunk and unemployed. And I had all of these judgments. And I didn't know I had these judgments until I was traveling through Northern Ontario and stopped at a gas station that was on the reserve and noticed that there was an Indigenous man behind the counter. And the first thought in my mind was, the place is probably dirty and he's likely drunk. And I was so appalled that I even had that thought. I went into the washroom, sat there for a moment, just trying to collect myself to feel what I was feeling, which was disgust at my thinking. And then as I sat with it, I realized that I had an opportunity. And the opportunity would be to, number one, observe the place I was in, which was a lovely little store and gas station. It was very clean. It was beautiful. And to have a conversation with the gentleman behind the counter, who was absolutely interesting and fun and absolutely a wonderful human being. It started with forgiving myself for having a racist thought, to forgive myself for being so quick to judge, and then at the same time to forgive my father for teaching me. That's where I got the message. We don't come into this life or into this world as racist or bigoted in any way. We come in as these pure beings of just love. And as we are conditioned and trained, we come up with beliefs and attitudes, thoughts that will enter our mind that are not even our own. They're thoughts that were given to us at a time in our lives when we just sort of were sponges and we just took it all in. So now we want to unwrap and unravel and begin to shift that. And so a willingness to forgive is sometimes our first step, and it can take a minute. right? Because we've got all these emotions. Now, if you go on to Google and you type in radical forgiveness worksheet, you will get Colin Tipping's worksheet that you can work with for forgiveness, which is really powerful. And it'll take you through the steps I mentioned earlier. The other thing to think about is, am I willing? Think about an area in your life where possibly someone has said something, done something, something's hurt you, and start with that. Am I willing to forgive the person, the event, myself, whatever the case may be? And start there. And on a scale from 0 to 100, where are you on that scale? Are you at 10%? Because you're like, I don't think I can forgive this. Or are you at 90% going, yeah, I think I've already done some forgiveness work on this. And we want to do that. That forgiveness scale allows us to put in perspective where we are. And I got this from Louise Hay's book, Life Loves You. This idea of a forgiveness scale. And it just really spoke to me, because I think when we start looking at our willingness to make a change, that's the first step. When we open up to that, in the book, she wrote, forgiveness is a new beginning. Forgiveness teaches us that staying in pain doesn't make pain go away. Guilt and resentment cannot make amends. Ooh. Yeah, we knew that, didn't we? Dying doesn't help the living. Forgiveness is the way back to love. Love is what helps you to live again. So we begin in that place of affirming, I say yes to forgiveness. I say yes to forgiveness. And we start there. And as we begin to open up to the possibility that forgiveness is about giving love to myself and then to the world, right? Because I can only give what I have. I can only give into life who I am. So what is the journey? So it's really important to allow ourselves to get beyond the blocks that are keeping us from living in the present moment. And we'll know when we've forgiven, because that person could walk into the room and we would be like, hey, how are you? It's so good to see you. There'd be an honest connection. And maybe you might forget what it was that you were upset about in the first place. But forgiveness and forgetting do not go together, ever. Forgiveness is about letting go of my expectation that the past could be different. It is an acceptance of what is, and it allows me to now view the situation in a different way, right? So I don't need to see it as horrible, awful. I can see it as, wow, that really helped me to grow. So I'm grateful for it. We can begin to shift that energy. And when we do that, we're empowered to live even in a much bigger, brighter way. So this journey that we're on is really about waking up. It's about finding who we really are and loving what we find, and having compassion for the mistakes that we've made along the way, and having compassion for others and the mistakes that they've made along the way. Now, that doesn't mean that, somebody who's abused you, you have them back over for tea. It means
Oh, it does. Okay, you have to use a cursor. Move the cursor over to yeah, right there. Up, up,
mute. Somebody needs to
up,
mute.
up.
Harold, you need to
You
mute.
don't know how to go up? Put your finger near the center of that pad, honey. Then it's easy. In the center.
We're good.
Okay. All righty. Where was I? All right. The joy of anything, we have those little opportunities to interrupt our Zen, and we need to just be okay with that too, because I'll tell you, I've forgotten to unmute and I've forgotten to mute. So
Okay, double tap then, or
a little bit extra. All right. So the idea of shifting the things that block us, because it makes sense if you think about it. If I'm resentful, if I'm feeling ashamed or guilty, if I'm frustrated and annoyed, all of these energies actually prevent me from being present, right? Because those all came from the past. And maybe I'm projecting into the future that, oh, this person will do it to me again, or that experience happened before, so it'll probably happen again. Those what if type conversations. And we want to get past that as well, because that is not going to serve us. All right. So we really want to pay attention to, how we're feeling, what's going on for us, and then to acknowledge that a compassionate act, a loving kindness is when I can let go of that thing that's been holding me. So we, take out the bolt cutters and cut the chain that's binding us to whoever or whatever has caused us this agony. In the Buddhist tradition, they say pain is inevitable. Suffering, however, optional. And suffering happens when I keep hanging on. But they did this to me, right? When we hold on to the past. So we have to let it go. So Einstein said, an active imagination is very, very powerful. But if we're focusing on all the problems and expanding them, right? The what ifs and the what it whens, that increases it. So our pain shows us what's coming next because we're focusing on the negative, what's difficulty, and whatever we're focusing on is what's going to expand and grow. So we have to learn to let those things go. There's a number of great books out there that can be very helpful. One is Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. Another one that I'm teaching on Sunday afternoons, Life Loves You by Robert Holden and Louise Hay. And that book also has a bit on forgiveness. I think most spiritual books talk about forgiveness at some point in time or another. It's how we heal disease, disconnect. It's how we lift our relationships, and it's how we transform our own personal lives into a place of freedom and possibility. It can't happen any other way. As long as we're holding a resentment, guilt, whatever, we are stuck. And being stuck means I can't grow, I can't move, I can't create. So we want to change that. Love ourselves enough to let it all go, to start something new. So again, the question, I want to invite you as well to do this for the next 7 days. Every day, just get up in the morning and go, how willing am I to forgive this particular situation? 0 to 100%, where am I at? And wherever you are, just acknowledge it. Nobody else knows, right? You could be at 0. I am so not ready to forgive this. That's okay, because only you know that. You don't have to tell anybody. I'm not going to check up on you, promise. And maybe you're at 50% and you go, well, 50%, that's pretty good. Maybe it's time I do this forgiveness work. Let me take that worksheet and see if I can work through it and get on the other side. Am I willing to forgive? Ask yourself that every day. What is mine to forgive today? What am I ready to let go of? What do I choose moving forward? Ah, yes, forgiveness. Isn't that the best? All right, let us go into a meditation. So I invite you to just let go of paper and pen, whatever you're writing, just set that aside. And I invite you to just close your eyes if you feel comfortable and take a deep breath in. And as you let go of that breath, just relax. One more deep breath. And as you let go, relaxing a little bit further. And one more time. Now allow your breath to just take its natural rhythm. And ask yourself the question, what is mine to forgive? What is mine to forgive? Whatever idea popped into your head, whatever thought crossed your mind, Start there. So I invite you to bring that into your awareness, whatever came up, and ask yourself, what is my willingness to forgive in this situation from 0 to 100%? What is my willingness? The energy of life is love. It's a powerful and transformative tool. And in the moment that I feel the energy and vibration of love at the core of my being, I begin to feel my connection to my source, my connection to everything around me. It is in that connection that forgiveness is essential. I invite you just to make those words your own, to just bring that awareness that forgiveness is essential to my freedom, my joy, my success. This journey of life and living is really a journey of wandering along, bumps in the road, moments of chaos, and yet at the very core, this one solid, powerful presence that is being you, that is being me, this one divine truth that all is love. And that love means oneness. And in this place, forgiveness becomes easy. So I invite you to just let go, surrender into the now moment, and accept a new day, a new experience of freedom, a new possibility. Taking a deep breath in. And then one more time, deep breath in. And as you exhale, you're turning your attention to this service and this time. And so it is.